Welcome to another episode of the Architects of Destiny podcast. In this episode, Keri Norley will be talking to us. Known as the Wealth Alchemist, Keri Norley helps people clear energetic, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual blockages around wealth and abundance. As an heiress to a family fortune, Keri is dedicated her adult life studying mindset programs that prevent individuals from holding on to their wealth and leaving a legacy of infinite abundance in the world. Combining practical and high vibrational ways to manifest and maintain wealth, like learning about investment, asset protection, cryptocurrency, with the spiritual aspect of money, Keri is here to help and equip people for the inevitable changes that come with the unfolding of the new earth. In this episode of the Architects of Destiny podcast, Keri discusses how we can all play a part in this new wealth community where power shifts from the richest 1% to the rest of humanity. It's our pleasure to welcome Keri Norley.
Welcome to the show, Keri, and thank you for accepting our invitation to the Architects of Destiny podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you, the Wealth Alchemist, to talk to us about new wealth in the new earth. Welcome.
It's so great to be here. I'm very excited to be on your show. I love the concept of this show, talking about the new earth. There are some amazing guests on here already in conversations. So I'm looking forward to seeing where it expands and to being able to help support your listeners.
Fantastic. Well, I want to get started by introducing your story, because you come from a wealthy background. Your family had means, and this kind of prompted you to pursue this journey of teaching others and helping others to work with the energy and with their mindset in order to attract wealth. So can you tell us a little bit about what you've learned growing up in a well-off family and the lessons that you've carried through to your adulthood, and also lessons that you teach in your clients and students?
That's a loaded question. It's a great question. Okay. So yeah, I'm happy to share. It took me a long time to begin with to actually be able to share my story around my family, my history, my experience of money, because interestingly enough, for a long time, no surprises, people would look at me and say, they can't resonate with me. You know, it wasn't even me. They would just generally say, I can't resonate with people who have money, da, 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 da. And I would hear all the stories because, you know, I just keep my mouth shut and listen to people and hear all the stories about how people with money are bad. Their rich people are evil. Money is all the stories that people have in their minds about money being bad. And so generally speaking, especially once I moved to Australia, so I'm originally from my random accent, I'm originally from Chicago area, and then moved to Australia, and I was there for 15 years. And when I moved to Australia, because a lot of people when I grew up knew who my family was. My family, my grandfather was the number one Chevrolet dealer in the world from 1936 to 1986. He sold 1 million cars, and he created fleet car leasing, which still today is one of the top fleet car leasing companies in the entire world. And so people knew my family. People in my area knew who I was. So when I left and I could hide, and I didn't have to be somebody that people would know who I was. And it's not like celebrity fame of like, you know, I'm not J-Lo when I would walk around, but if I was with my family, people knew. And if I was new in the communities, people knew who I was, and, or knew who my family was. And you couldn't drive around Chicago without seeing my grandfather's name on the back of cars everywhere. And so, so with that said, when I left, I went the other opposite direction. You know, I went into the world of figuring it out for myself. Wasn't given everything on a silver platter in that way. And I just lived my life, and people didn't really know. And so eventually though, I got to the point where I was just like, I started to do my own money mindset work, and I was struggling because every money mindset program that is out there that I have found, tell me if you find one somewhere else, because I haven't seen it. I wished it was there. I prayed for it. That
it's
somebody
from rags to riches. How to make money, right?
How to make money, right? And every money mindset program is around if you have nothing and how do you change everything. But I'm like, I don't have those same beliefs. I didn't believe that money was bad. I didn't believe that people with money were evil or bad people. I love my family, right? So I'm like, that's like saying to me like, oh my God, I'm a terrible person and my family's terrible. I'm like, no, that's not true. And so there was, and I also know that historically speaking, anyone who gets an inheritance or lottery or somehow receives a lump sum of money, within 2 years, 70 to 80% of those people, not only is it gone that they spent it, but a lot of people end up bankrupt, right? And because they overspend, and then they have.
Yeah, I've got a personal story about that, because this kind of sometimes carries even through generations. My husband's family actually won lottery. His grandparents did, and they left a little bit of this distributed it throughout the family. But, part of the family lost it on stock exchange. We, in the end, invested in a business. The business went bust. And then we discovered the whole energetic reasons for why this happened. But that's, a whole bunch of, there's a big story which we've told on another podcast. But that's exactly what happens, because people are not used to it. And sometimes it also happens when you actually make it yourself. So it's not some kind of windfall, but you go to it and then it's like, ugh,
what do I do with this?
Yeah, I feel uncomfortable.
Right. So that's where I started down in my journey with money mindset stuff. And I really had to do my own personal work to figure out, because I was like, the last thing I want to do in my life is take this beautiful inheritance, a lot of which I have not received yet. Like, it's not mine in my hands yet. But I know is coming. Right. And the last thing I want to do is be that person who spends it. I want to be the third generation who takes that and, increases the legacy. And how can I take that legacy and make it even greater in my own way? And there's so much to that, because it's my own way. Like, how do I do this? And so many times in legacy things, it's like, oh, it has to be the family's way, or, we have to be part of the family business, or whatever that is. So like, how can we take that and grow it? Was my personal mission, right? I don't want to be that person. But then as I started diving into it, I was like, I could help trust fund babies, other people like me. Cause then I was like, oh, they would resonate. When you go to the financial planners of the world, they will tell you that their trust fund babies are some of the most pain in the ass clients, because they haven't understood this. They didn't actually learn how to grow and hold wealth. It's not part of something that necessarily is taught.
Absolutely.
And so that was a piece. And then it didn't quite work the way that I wanted it to in my business. And then I expanded it to entrepreneurs, because the same thing, as you just said, as we grow our businesses, then we tend to have more money. And what I've seen anywhere from people with 6 to 7 figure businesses, that at the end of the year, they can have nothing to show for it. And I'm like, how is it that you are making 7 figures and you have no money to show for it? That's oh my God. Right. And so this is where I started to really start to look at, like, okay, so there's a lot of people who teach manifestation work, but there's not a lot of people who teach generational wealth. And how do we take this money? How do we energetically learn to hold the money while also being in flow? Like, this is an interesting piece, right? Because we're either in scarcity and deeply holding, like, hold it, don't let it go. Or we're in this, like, people will go to the overflow. All of a sudden they've got it and they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And it just goes right through. Right. And so, like, there is a dance to find the middle. And it's definitely been part of my journey. It's part of what I help other people with in this and in the energetics of it. And then eventually I ended up writing my book, The New Wealth, and I broke down. So I talk about magnetizing abundance, holding your wealth, and leaving a legacy. So I started to break down these aspects. And from that book, the multi-layered piece to it was looking at, well, if we have the ability to hold our wealth and we have the ability to, like, look at how do we create legacy wealth, then it ultimately becomes infinite abundance. Like, how can we actually create infinite abundance? And so I was in this world of, like, infinite abundance and, like, daydreaming about it. And it was a daydream, really, because at some level, like, it's also kind of like, I don't know, like, there is that true? Is that real? And then I'm like, it's sitting here in this quantum field conversation, right? Of course it is. Everything is possible. And of course we're always looked after. So of course that can happen. And so that's when I started to also look at the crypto system. And the crypto system, to me, which at the time when I was looking at it, it is a very volatile space. And I reached out to some crypto mentors that I have, and I was like, can you guys help? Can I refer to you in the book in case people want to come into this world? But it still wasn't the answer until I found DeFi, which is a part of the crypto space. And it is the borrowing and lending where you can actually take your money, put it in as, like, an asset, and see it compounding interest grow. So it's a stable asset that grows. And all of a sudden, everything landed in my body. And I was like, oh my God, it's already here. And so for me, when you ask me like some of the lessons, like to me, it's a lot about how do we energetically expand to be able to hold our wealth, to be able to grow it. And now we have a system that allows us to break free of the corrupt banking system, move into this, as we talk about the new earth. I call it the new wealth, but the new earth. And we move into this new aspect. Like there is now a financial system that is here, that is being built, that will allow us to have a completely free, decentralized, I say free as in freedom, decentralized banking system. I don't know that it's the be all end all. I'm kind of also of that. If we're in the quantum realms, I kind of go to like, do we need any of this at all? And my human self likes money, likes to know that I'm safe and that there's money behind me and that I'm going to have a roof over my head and yada, yada. But in the quantum realms, do we need any of that?
Well,
right. So I don't know if it's the be all end all. I don't know if it's like some gateway into some other thing, but right now it's this really beautiful place that I love teaching about and exploring to help people to be able to literally create infinite amounts of abundance. So that's like, I'd say the overview, if that helps, right?
Yes, it definitely helps. But there are so many rabbit holes we can go through from this overview. So let's start with the decentralized new quantum financial system that is, I can tell you're passionate about it. And you were right, I connect to many different galactic races, and I know that many of them don't have, actually none of them have a financial system, an economy as we know it. It is this infinite abundance, where Arcturians being prime example, where everybody gets what they need. When they need resources for research, they get research. When they need resources to train as a pilot, they get a spacecraft. Whatever they need, they manifest from the quantum. Well, here on Earth, we haven't been really conditioned in the same way. In fact, we have been conditioned, most of the population have been conditioned into scarcity, as you yourself have noticed when you were exploring various, mindset programs. You in a very small minority. But before we start talking about mindset and all of these personal aspects of finances and how we can create this infinite abundance, I love the word infinite abundance, by the way. It's got a nice ring to it. But before we get into it, let's paint more of a global picture. Tell us a little bit more about the, details and nuances of this new decentralized financial systems, because to some of our listeners, this may be all new. And if you can just highlight some differences between what we've got at the moment, which we kind of on a deep level know it doesn't work. There is no fairness. There's this ever increasing mountain of debt, and there's a lot of power and control built into the very fabrics of the system. So how will this new system be different?
Such a good question. And I do love talking about it because a lot of people, for me, when I talk to a lot of people around this space, the initial response tends to be, oh, it's a scammy investment place and I don't know about it, so I'm not going to go there. Right. And so the reason that I love sharing about it is because it is so much more than that. Like crypto, the blockchain, decentralized finance it is evolutionizing, re-evolutionizing the way that we will do many, many things on this planet. And so to start with, if we just look at decentralized finance in and of itself, which is actually separate of and similar to, uses the blockchain. So let's explain, because a lot of people don't understand even just words. The words, Keri can speak words today. So the blockchain in and of itself is a ledger. And that basically all that means is it tracks numbers. So like if you were an accountant and you were to sit down and you go, okay, this is what we've put into the banking today. This is what we pulled out, and it has black and white. These are the numbers, right? But they can all be fudged when you are in the real world right now, right? Which we see. And so we see a lot of businesses and companies who are like, oh, look, we're in the black, but look, we've got all this debt over here that we're just not telling you about that would actually put us shit tons into the red, right? And so then like once it's been done, they can put it back. With the blockchain, nothing can be changed. It is an unchangeable place, and it is completely transparent. So where we can't see what's actually happening in the government right now, we would be able to watch everything on a blockchain if they had to stamp things and move things, and we would actually be able to see completely, fully transparent what is going on and where our money is going, which is in and of itself its own revolution, right? Of trust and accessibility to knowing what's actually going on with money, because money disappears all the time from the government. We don't know where it goes, right? So besides that, if we then take that and we look at decentralized finance. So like I said, decentralized finance is, or DeFi is what it would be shortened into, is its own little section of the crypto space. So most people know things like Bitcoin, maybe ETH. I'm sure over the year you've heard Dogecoin. And those are these really volatile assets that go up and down. And the way that I can explain the difference between these two, I try and take this to like what your mind will understand in the fiat world. The fiat is our current banking system. And so it's like the volatiles like Bitcoin and ETH and these are much like a stock market, right? They up and down. We want to research them as if I was buying a business, because each of these assets is what they are, has a different purpose, has a different reason. There's a project behind it. So you're wanting to know, like, do I want to be a part of this? Does this have utility? Is this going to be helpful in the world? And so just like you would get into the stock market, you'd be like, okay, does this business going to be a viable business that I want to invest in? So it's similar to that. Whereas DeFi, this other little space in here, is much like the banking system. So in our banking system, for most people, you probably don't even realize this, because I know it's been a long education for me on the current system to be able to understand and be able to map you guys to this other system. So in the current system, we have in your savings accounts right now, you'd be lucky to be making 0.5%. It is the highest I have seen. Most people are sitting at about 0.1, 0.01. It's next to nothing that you are making in your savings account, but your money is sitting there and the bank takes that money and it loans it out. So as it loans it out, whether it's on a mortgage, a business loan, a personal loan, credit card loan, they're making anywhere from 4 to 24, 28% interest. From that, we're making 0.01 to 0.5% interest. Nothing. The banks take the rest of that and they make either profit or they're running their business, right? They obviously have to run their business too.
There's obviously more to that, because they actually lend not just what's actually on your deposit,
right?
They lend,
to the ninth degree. That's right. They can loan it out 9 times. And as of the last couple of years, they have to hold 0% of that. So they held nothing. If we were all to go and ask the banks to release our money right now, the banks would be screwed because they do not actually have all of that money. It's a big problem, which is how we're going to end up in collapses. That's how we ended up in the global financial crisis before. They did not have enough money to actually provide for the loans that they had out. And now, the thing that you guys need to know and think about is back then in 2008, when we had the global financial crisis, the banks were bailed out by the government when they didn't have enough money. Right now, since then, the government's got smart. They didn't want to have to necessarily do the bailing out next time. So they've now made a bail-in law. So that says that if the banks need to freeze your assets to utilize them, they can freeze your assets. So if you have money sitting in a bank, it's not safe. They can freeze your assets. It has happened. It's happened in Cyprus and Greece. It's happened around the world. This is not something that is like unheard of to happen. And you could need to go to the bank and get your $100 out to buy your food, and you won't be able to. And so when we start to look at that, then we start to look at, well, decentralized finance, right? And so the world of decentralized finance, now we have this space where we have borrowing and lending within the crypto space. So somebody can borrow money. I don't need to get into the technical details. I'm going to give you the overall for you to understand this, but somebody can borrow money and I ultimately put it into a pool or a bank, right? I put it into a pool, which is like a big pool of money. And much like my money sitting in a savings account that the bank is lending out, and I don't have to know who the person is that lends it out, right? I need to understand the contracts, the details, or the loans or the arrangements. They loan it out whether I know the person or not, right? The same concept in the DeFi space, and my money gets lent out and I make the interest. So we become our own banks and we eliminate the middleman. And through that, the interest rates that we can get, plus we also get compounding daily interest, which is something that until this point in time has only been for the banks, right? So you guys might get, like, if you're in a CD, you might get your interest and it gets paid out after 3 months, if that's the CD. If you're in a savings account, you might get it monthly distributed. There's no way anywhere that I have seen in the fiat space that you are going to get daily compounding interest. So every single day, for those of you who are the spiritual people of this world, and I know if you've been manifesting, you're probably like most people that I've heard. And one of the things you repeat to yourself is, I make money every single day. Every single day, money shows up in my account, right? I'm sure we've heard that many times before in our minds and our manifestations. This is actually how it happens. And you can be asleep and your money will show up. You can be out partying and your money will show up. You can be out meditating and playing with your crystals and your money will show up every single day. We get to have this from the banks, like the banks would. And so this is how this works now. And we can then start we have stable assets that are making compounding interest daily, and we become the banks. And this is like the beginning of what is here for us in this space. And it excites me because it brings power back to us as the people, right? The whole blockchain space, the whole crypto space, like I said, I mean, I could go on for hours about the importance of what this is going to do for the world outside of this, but this in and of itself, and I will say, one of the reasons it is so important right now is, especially, I'm sure anyone who's listening has noticed that everything is getting more expensive. Inflation is going up like crazy. I mean, I saw the statistic 6.2% here in the States. I've seen 10%. I've seen 12 or 13% in Germany. But the reality is, you guys, I walk outside the door and I know that petrol prices or gas prices are up at least 50%. They were $2 last year. They're now at $3.20, right? Like, just look at this. I walk through the grocery stores and all of a sudden the packaging has shrunk and I'm paying the same, or I'm paying a little bit more and it might be 50 cents, but it's 50 cents here, 50 cents there, $1 here, right? Our electricity prices, everything is going up. So if our money isn't making, I'm going to say that minimally 6.3%, right? Minimally, we know that it's actually probably much higher than that if I look at the overall picture, then my money is going backwards sitting in an account. So I know a lot of people who want to stick their heads in the hole about this, because I know I certainly have done that in my lifetime, right? And they're like, oh, it's just going to go away. It's going to get better. I don't know what to do. And so, especially as entrepreneurs, I see it all the time. I'm too busy to deal with that. I just want to focus on my business. And I'm like, do you realize how much money you are leaving on a table, or how much you're screwing yourself by not paying attention to this? And your money is going backwards every single day. The more that you do not pay attention to what's going on the global financial picture that you have to get to, or that you get to learn to be able to keep up with, and to be able to empower yourself to have financial sovereignty. And this space ultimately gives us that full sovereignty. And as we go through this shift into the new earth, into this new wealth piece, right? Like, we're wanting to decentralize from governments. We're wanting to look at all of the corruptness. It is showing up as the veil comes down. We're seeing this darkness. We're seeing the things that are not working for us. And this gives us a way for us to be sovereign, in that, like, nobody literally can access, when I start teaching DeFi to people, like, literally no one has access to your money except for you, unless you give it to them.
The thing is, Keri, I see a big problem with it. And you know what the problem is? The problem is our collective and individual mindset. Because as I'm listening to what you're saying, it's such an incredible picture you're painting. And I know on a deep level, we're heading this way as a collective, as the earth. This old system's not going to survive. I feel it in my bones and every fabric of my being. I know that the fiat currency is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when it collapses. It will eventually, and we will move to a new system. However, when you hear about this, and obviously we've got different options. The beautiful decentralized option that you've just described is one reality, but there is another, which is actually more control, and all the
100%
central bank tokens and stuff like that. And the reason we want to focus on the mindset is that our mindset will determine which system eventually wins. And I can see there's a big challenge for us as humanity and for us as individuals in this is too good to be true. Because that's the first thing that just literally, I'm thinking, listen to you, I was like, oh my goodness me, you describing this beautiful, beautiful reality, beautiful option. I know there is someone out there listening to this at the moment, thinking to himself or herself, that's too good to be true. How is that even possible? Because we've been conditioned to that scarcity. We've been conditioned to non-sovereignty, to lack of control. So my question to you is, how can we, as awakening souls, as people who want sovereignty, want freedom, or at least, consciously we want sovereignty and freedom. So how can we shift into a mindset that matches energetically this new reality, this new wealth? Because otherwise, if we don't, then we're going to be stuck in even more control and, more scarcity. So have you got any bits of advice? Because, it's not just a case of, okay, I'm going to now move my money from my bank account to this decentralized exchange. But if I don't feel comfortable and secure with it, that's not going to work. So how do I get
100%.
to a point of feeling secure within my mindset?
Such a good question. I'm going to take this in two parts because I want to actually emphasize the thing that you said is the shadow side, and you bring a really good point to it. And so for those of you who did, Aria started to talk, and I want to deepen into that first because it is important. One of the reasons that I share this message is because there are central banking digital currencies coming, and I want to be the one who reaches you first before you trust the other one. Right. And you are 100% correct. We have central banking digital currencies coming. Last week, India announced theirs will be coming sometime either this year or next year. China already has a digital one that is being trialed. The United States is working on theirs. Plenty of countries in Europe are working on theirs. So this is not a matter of if, or it's just a matter of when they will start showing up. And so the thing is that if I explain this from a big picture, these are all coded. Right? Like basically anybody who can code information can code a currency, can code an asset. And so these central banking digital currencies, and then we can code anything we want into them, which is also something that we get to look at when we're deciding what project we want to be involved in, right? Because it depends on how they've coded things. And so with the digital currencies from the central banking, my fear and my assumption and my guess is they will be more control. And so the things that we get to look at in this space is they can actually say, they could code it to say, once this person hits $10,000 in their account, they get no more money in here. Once this person has spent $1,000 in their groceries, they don't get to spend more money in their groceries. Once this person has, and who knows, right? It'll be whatever they decide.
Yeah, it could be even like, okay, you can spend on your fruit and veg, but you can't buy, I don't know, meat or cigarettes or whatever,
right.
Or you've just exceeded your fun budget for this month. No more
Absolutely.
spending on personal care or
whatever. They can code it to do whatever the heck they want. The other piece of it is now in a decentralized format. Right now, if I go on, you could take anybody's wallet, which is a bunch of numbers, and you can go, because like I said to you to begin with, the blockchain is completely transparent. So you can go and you can find a wallet and you can literally look like, you could go find people who are multi-billionaires or millionaires. If you can find their wallet, you can actually see through their numbers. You won't know who it is, where they've spent their money, how they're investing, what they're holding, right? If you're not smart about the way you do this, you can literally see everything that's happening. So by the government actually taking these tokens, what they'll do is they'll say, cool, we're going to send you money, i.e. last year over these last few years, we've been receiving money from the government as, through COVID help and stuff, right? We've received it through checks or bank accounts, however they've sent it to you, but they don't have access to that. Now, with these central banking digital currencies, they'll say, we're going to scan this right to your wallet. We're going to send this. You just had to give them your wallet information. By you giving them their wallet information, they have now just seen, this is Keri. This is her wallet. I know who Keri is. I know her wallet. I can now go find out every single thing she is spending her money on. Everything. You just given them access to literally see your entire spending, savings, growings, whatever you're doing. And so these are the things that we have to be aware of because there is a shadow side. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can be smart about it. You can receive the money and still be smart about it. And you can also not be a part of it and go into the world that is actually decentralized, where you do not actually have to be a part of that, right? And so that's first, I agree with you. There's a shadow side to this. Number two, you asked about too good to be true. So I thought the same thing. And if you guys go seriously on my podcast, so my podcast is called the Wealth Alchemist podcast. And my third podcast is with my mentor, Roscoe Pattison. And we talk about DeFi. We dive deeper into DeFi and how this all works and everything. If you want to go, you can go check that out. But I asked him on the show, I was like, why do more people not know about this? What is like, and my first question to him when I first started learning about it is like, what is the biggest risk? This can't be real. Right? Like I had the same question. I was like, how in heaven's name do more people not know about this? Why is not everybody in it? And what's my biggest risk? Well, your biggest risk, and he told me this straight up. He's like, the biggest risk is that you will lose your money. Your biggest risk is you become financially sovereign. And when you become financially sovereign and you hold your money in this space, then if you mess it up, if you give your details to someone, if you do, like, and it happens, if there's scams are out there and all this kind of stuff, that you can be wiped out. It is the biggest risk, right? But our sovereignty, our freedom comes with risk and responsibility. And this is why people will either have hesitancy to coming in because they don't trust themselves and they don't feel safe in their own ability to actually hold their money, right? And it only will happen to shift your mindset when you do it. I watch people who are in fear and it can take literally months to get them into the space. I've watched people who have come in overnight. I see all of people's shit as they come up into the space because it will bring your stuff up. And the way to get over it is do it. And when you start seeing that money show up every single day, you're going to be like, oh, she's not kidding. And then all of a sudden you have more and more belief. And it doesn't mean that you take your entire life savings. Like I know when I did this, I put a couple grand in first. I was like, all right, I have $5,000. I think I put in first. I was like, okay, let's see if this works. And I was like, oh, wait, it's working. And then I put a little bit more in. I was like, wait, it's still working. And then I was like, all right, I'm in. Right. I had to also educate myself. And I think this is the other piece of this mindset piece is it isn't too good to be true. It is real. This does exist. I can tell you, I have now been making money for months in this space, over a year now, showing up every single day. It works. Right. So it's not too good to be true. And the piece that we get our head around is like, what is it for me to be sovereign? And I know you're talking to, when I was listening to your call with Abby, the accountant, you guys were talking about sovereignty as well. And sovereignty is a big word. Like if you actually sit with this, what does it mean to you to be sovereign? And I think when we start to look at money and wealth, it goes beyond our actual, like how much cash we have, right? To me, sovereignty is that I can fully sustain myself in any way, shape, or form. Like I now am at the point of like, oh, what are we going to do about food? Because that's another issue that we have coming, right? Yeah. With supply chain issues and all this kind of stuff and GMOs and all the things that they're trying to do to dumb us down with all of these things, right? And so how is that going to, how are we going to be sovereign in that? Like what does sovereignty look like for you? And then when you start to dig into that for yourself, then the only thing I can say to you is just go start taking small actions, start educating yourself, because that's going to be your way around mentally overcoming this. Because to me, what I see is that when you start to look into this space and you start to understand it from that bigger picture of what this actually is beyond that, like up and down investing thing, you're going to start to see freedom. And it's like, to me, I don't know about you, Ria, when you started to look into all this, it's kind of like there's a big freaking fire hose and you just start drinking the water down and hoping you get some of it.
This episode is brought to you by the Quantum Club. The Quantum Club is a membership program designed to help you develop your spiritual abilities, such as connecting to your galactic soul family as guides, speaking light languages, channeling, transmitting and receiving light technology. Every week we hold live sessions and work with you energetically on a deep level to unlock your divine intuitive gifts, to connect deeper than ever before with your higher self and galactic light beings. To find out more, head to bit.ly/galactic club. That's bit.ly/galactic club. See you there.
World energetic and the quantum world is like that. When it works, it's just like magic. And sometimes I have to pinch myself when I see, as I do energetic work, and then instant shifts happen in my reality, and the same happens to clients that I work with, and we're like, does that really work like that? It's like magic. And it's just,
it is magic.
What helps me is that I kind of never lost belief in magic. I've always been a big fan of all the fantasy books and mythology, and we seeing this world of magic coming into every area of our existence.
Everything.
And quantum coming to the financial system too, as well as others. So I feel like perhaps the first step is, like you say, educating yourself and being open-minded. And I'm going to ask you at the end to send our listeners to your space and to explore more. Or in fact, let's do it straight away. If people want to explore more, where can they find you? You've got your podcast, The Wealth Alchemist, so that's probably a very, very, very good place to start that financial education. And
Totally.
You've got your book, right?
And I've got my book. It's called The New Wealth, Magnetize. Oh, that was exciting. My candle fell. Magnetize Abundance, Hold Your Wealth and Leave a Legacy. The New Wealth, you can get it on Amazon. And I have an intro to crypto training. It is free. It is free for the time being as we sit here and record this episode. I don't know how long it will be free for. But right now you can go to kerinorley.com/crypto intro, and you can come in and check that out. And it's a deep dive into, it's over 3 days, and I do about an hour and 15 to an hour and 30 minutes content each day. All around this whole space, talking about crypto, what it is, the blockchain, NFTs, DAOs. So like another thing that we can start to look at, and it's one of my favorite things. And I remember, actually, I think something that came up out in The Accountant too, around, and I can't remember exactly what you said. I wish I could remember, but around communities and being able to just kind of like, we'll be able to have our own say around things. And the DAOs are these decentralized autonomous organizations. And we literally, it becomes on the blockchain. Again, remember, the blockchain just literally holds information, data, right? And so we can start to have votes that can't be tampered with, that are totally anonymous. And this is what we'll start to see as communities develop, that we'll have these autonomous organizations that are decentralized. And so you could be like in a beautiful community of, people, we all live together in a housing situation, right? And we're all growing our food together and all that kind of stuff. And we created DAO. And then instead of knowing that my neighbor's the one who voted against me and then being pissed off because my neighbor voted against me, because that's what we see in the reality of humanity, right? They're going to be able to vote anonymously on the blockchain, totally with the inability to be able to change anything. And we'll be able to run and manage communities. And we can do this borderlessly. And we can do this within our small communities. We can do this. So like right now, my mentors created SyncDAO, which is a financial. So we'll be able to vote into how we want to all grow this money together. And, getting anywhere from 15 to 30%, 40% compounding interest rates. And so, and it will be borderless. So like there's people all around the world that are already becoming part of this DAO, right? And so we'll start to see these types of things. And so I dive into a lot of all of this kind of stuff in the intro to crypto. So it's kerinorley.com/crypto intro if anyone wants to understand like more about the Web 3.0 stuff and crypto and all that kind of stuff. And of course, there's paid things too that once you guys come into that, you can always reach out for.
Sure, and we're going to link to all of these beautiful resources in the podcast notes and on the website, because what I feel is that it's so important that as we are upgrading ourselves energetically, we're seeing this vision of what the world can look like, what we refer to as a new earth. But it's also so crucial that we've got the infrastructure, the knowledge,
yes,
and the systems to back it all up, and then we're familiar with it, because these are like tools that we need to learn to use. Otherwise, it's going to be chaos. So we don't want to be left out and be like, oh, that's what is the blockchain,
right?
What is an NFT? And I feel like a lot of people feel like they're in a limbo now, because in a way it is a limbo. We're waiting for this old corrupt system of power and control on every level to die a death. And it's already dying. We can see it. It's just clinging on to life. It's kind of like, trying to stay as it is, and the governments and the politicians are all trying to sustain this dead corpse. But we know that is gonna die. We know things are about to shift in a big way. We're gonna witness changes in our lifetime that our grandparents and parents haven't gone through.
Absolutely.
So that new earth is also about learning new tools and educating ourselves. And as we are in this waiting transition period, we've got a choice. We can either transition by doing nothing and just waiting, or we can be active participants and be spending this time preparing ourselves for what's going to happen once this old falls away. And the better equipped we are, whether it's mastering the energetic world, whether it's mastering those quantum tools, whether it's mastering all these, finances, taxes. This is why we're bringing to this podcast people from all walks of life and from all the different specialisms, in order for our listeners to learn, all these things. So if you're listening to it, the choice is yours, how you're spending this time, because it's coming. It's
coming. It's not avoidable. Like, I mean, I put up a post on Facebook the other day. I'm going to pull this up actually. And like the headlines were things like Apple. Hold on, here it is. Apple is creating payment systems now to be able to use crypto. Disney is hiring an NFT expert. Google CEO looking at blockchain. US Senator, crypto is here to stay. Visa, 100 million vendors accept crypto payments. Mexico's third richest, Bitcoin better than gold. Thailand removes crypto taxes. NFL to create NFT partnerships. Apple says the metaverse has huge potential. Like, you guys, like, it's huge.
Yeah,
right?
Like more proof.
These big, huge companies are getting in. Nike, Adidas have gotten trademarks. Like, there is no avoiding this anymore. LA just had crypto.com is now the huge football stadium is now sponsored by crypto.com. Coinbase has gone public, right? Like, there is no stopping this. The governments have tried stopping this. Last year, like I said last week, we found out that India is doing their central banking digital currency, but they also have started to look at how they're going to tax it, right? This is part of inevitable. The government's going to try and tax this stuff and do the things that they can to make their money off of it, it is what it is, right? But that means it's becoming adopted because the governments are paying attention now, right? And so this is it. Like, for years, I mean, I remember last year when India tried to ban it, and everybody was like, see, look, it can't work because India's banning it. Oh, and then market crashed off again because people freaked out. China tried banning it. It doesn't work. They can get the miners out of there, but they can't stop. You cannot, like, the whole point of this is you cannot stop blockchain. Like, you can't, there's no way. It's just, it is just a ledger. Like, there's nothing to stop about it. Right. And so now, instead of the government's trying to stop it because they realize they can't, they're going to come in. Instead of these big companies being like, I'm going to bury my head and not believe this stuff, they're figuring out how to utilize it. And so as we start to see this, like, it's like this will be, it's really funny because as I teach DeFi stuff, because to get into DeFi in and of itself, there's complications. It's why people aren't all in it right now, because you actually have to learn how to do this. And you have to learn how to do it safely. So it's why I teach it the way that I teach it. So, like, I teach you how to fish, not I'm going to show you here, this is the thing you want to go buy. And so that you can go do this for yourself. But I've looked at people and laughed. I'm like, in 3 years, we're all going to be laughing that, like, we actually had to do this. It's going to be like the dial up of AOL going, right? And then like clicking out and you're like, oh my God, I can't stand this. Not that my internet sometimes doesn't do the same annoying things now, but there's just less noise around it. But like, this is the intro stages, and we have to be willing to make these things and take these risks. And it's interesting because one of the things that you said, and it made me think this about mindset stuff too, is, and I said to you, like, taking the actions, right? Because as we take these actions, I keep saying, and I don't like putting this out into the world because I know the quantum world, right? So I don't want to put this into your world like this has to happen. And the reality of investing for yourself, period, across the board, then coming into the crypto space and investing, there are risks. There are risks that you will make choices that didn't work, that you won't sell at the right time, that somehow you'll get scammed, whatever it is, right? And this is across the board, across any way that you're going to invest. right? And this is where you will find you asked me about money mindset stuff, right? You will find it because it will show it to you. It will be revealed. And I can tell you the amount of people, I've had a handful of people who've reached out over this last few months that have been like, Keri, I got scammed. This money's gone. Can I get it? No, you can't. And sometimes there might be a way to, but in sometimes there is not. And a lot of times there is not. And I look at them and I'm like, welcome to your initiation. Right? Welcome to this part where you're going to learn some really big lessons and you probably will never do them again. Right? And it's through these actions and it's through moving into the spaces that are uncomfortable that we learn these lessons. And some of them, it wasn't a huge amount of money. Some of them, it was like that wiped them out. Some of them, it is, it depends on the person. And I always say this, like, if we don't look at both sides of this, right, then we will lose money. But the loss of things or the not gaining of things or whatever happens is such a beautiful lesson. And every single person, once I've said it to them and I love them through it, every time they're like, oh my God, Keri. I'm like, I know, because I've made mistakes too. And there've been some hard lessons I've had to learn, right?
I've lost my entire investment portfolio. I've lost everything. We've been, insolvent. We've lost our business. And you know what? This was the most beautiful, most powerful lesson in my life. And less than 2 years after this, we're back on track. We're rolling. We're living in a beautiful place. I'm not kind of going hungry or homeless. It's just, in fact, it's like phoenix out of the ashes. You come out bigger and better, and you only learn, your own shadows, and you learn how to deal with them. So it's all a learning curve. However, I am aware that there will be people listening to it and thinking, goodness me, this is more science fiction than talking about extraterrestrials. How do I get into investing if I can barely make ends meet? Maybe the people on fixed income, because I don't know, of retirement. Maybe there is people here listening who have jobs and they're just about meeting their financial demands, etc. Maybe there's people who have a very small amount of savings and income left every month. How do you get from this position into a position where you're comfortably investing and making this transition without going through all these kind of, how to make money gurus?
It's a really good question. And I think to begin with, and it's funny because I'm going to say, as much as I don't like it, for the time here, right? Like it's a hard question to answer because I want to give a bigger answer to this, but I really believe that first of all, it's the habit, right? So regardless of whether you're going to be investing or putting it into a savings account or whether you're going to bring it into the crypto space, right? It's the habit of starting to take money and putting it aside for savings, for future, for whatever, like just for now, create it as your nest egg. Like this is a do not touch. I mean, for my entire life, I've always had like, for as long as I can remember, a do not touch. Like we do not touch that thing over there. Right. And it becomes, and it's hard at first for a lot of people to understand this because they think I'm going to need to touch it. I'm, And at some point, like I know I just spoke to somebody recently who has a do not touch thing and like shit hit the fan and she needed to touch it because her car blew up and all these things. I'm like, okay, right. But that's also beautiful, right? Now you have an emergency account that you didn't have before because you started savings, right? And it might start with $5. Might start with $5 a week, $1 a week. Whatever you can start to do. And even at that point, like this is where I look at things like sometimes I create a good habit around this. So like maybe I was eating too much chocolate or I was having too many coffees, right? And I can say, okay, if I give up 1 bar of chocolate a week or 1 coffee a week, that's $3. Okay, I take that and I put it aside. Don't do something that is so like, I can't do this. And that your mind is like, this is going to freak me out. My nervous system's going to freak out because you won't do it. But you start to build this habit. And I remember when I started learning personal development stuff, this was probably like 15, 16 years ago. And I listened to John DeMartini. And it was one of the best things I ever heard him say. And he said, your nervous system can handle an increase every 3 months of 10%. And you will bring that money in and your nervous system can handle it. And you will not freak out about all of a sudden that 10% is now somewhere else. So if you start at $3 a week, which becomes $12 a month, right? Then in 3 months, increase that by 10%. So now you're at $3.30 a week. If you can go further than that, go ahead, try it, right? and then go. So like my mentor just said to me this year, he's like, I want you to increase your profit by 20%. I was like, I was taking 10%. I'm like, what? That felt really big to me. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I still need to pay my bills. He's like, great, go get another client.
I suppose, what changed since personal development is this whole thing that we are upgrading. Everything is accelerating. Our manifestations are accelerating. Our mind, there's more than just a mindset work. We're not just working with thoughts and positive thinking. We can work with energy. We can work with ancestral patterns, and then things really shift. So, maybe what was possible 10% every 3 months, maybe now is 10% every 3 days, if you can get it
could
right.
be.
So
Right.
we obviously don't know. It all depends on the person, but you're making a great point. It's about finding this place of comfort and nervous system relaxation, so there's not like a recoil effect.
Right.
So
Because then you won't go and spend it. You'll be like, oh, it's sitting over there. I know this is what I'm doing. And also sometimes I think if you really have a thought process of what is this for? Why am I doing this? Then you'll be more inclined to do it. Like I love seeing my money grow. It really makes me, it makes me happy. I love it. Like a lot of people look at my numbers and they're like freaking out. I'm like, just learn to love numbers, learn to love seeing your money grow, learn to look at your account and go, look, how can I make this grow today? And ask yourself, like gamify it, and then even give yourself rewards. And it doesn't have to be financial rewards, but give yourself rewards for doing these things and making it a fun thing to do. Like, how can you make playing with your money? I look at it as playing with my money. How can I play with my money and make it fun? Right. And it might just start in that space of like, if you've never really been good at savings, start there. Just start by putting money aside. Even if it's not like you have a savings account. Like I know with people, like you can literally have cups on your freaking windowsill and chuck some cash in there. Right. And then eventually you're going to be like, oh my God, look how much money I have. Right. And then you challenge yourself. Oh, you know what? I just won a windfall of $20. Cool. Put it in there. Don't spend it. And see, like challenge yourself as to how far you can go with this. And then, people will say this a lot about investing. Once you've actually learned again to hold this money, right? You've earned the right now to hold this money, then go and invest it and see it grow. Things like DeFi, again, there's some really great places, but again, it's tricky to show you how to get there. If you were wanting to get into the space, like there's a lot of people who will tell you as far as like volatiles go. I'm not a financial advisor. Please do whatever you do at your own peril and your own risk, and know that you are getting into a volatile space as I say this. But in the crypto space, there are a lot of people who will what's called dollar cost average in. And so two of the major assets or coins that are pretty stable, not stable, I will say safe. I'm going to say quote unquote safe, right? They're big. They're not really going to be hacked. Safe as a crypto can get are Bitcoin and ETH. They're my two places that if I was going to say to you that you're pretty like as safe as it gets, you could dollar cost average into Bitcoin. You could dollar cost average into ETH. ETH to me is a utility. I think it's going to be, you have a lot more growth in ETH to see. Like for it to double from 3,000 to 6,000 is going to be a little bit easier than Bitcoin to double from 40,000 to 80,000, right? Mm-hmm. In theory, because we have less of it to move, right? In theory, I've also seen Bitcoin do crazy ass things. So it's gone pretty high and come straight back down. So those are the places as well that like, even if you take $5 a week and you just want to start playing and you want to just get in, like put $5 a week in, and you can do that. And you can just buy into, and in the intro to crypto, I show you how, if you've never done this, how you can get into those spaces and be able to buy the pieces or buy the crypto, either the Bitcoin or the ETH, and $5 a week, and just start somewhere so that you can start to see that you can play with this. And then you'll start to see, even on these small numbers, you'll start to see your shit come up. Right?
Absolutely. It's the lessons that you're going to learn whilst you're doing these practical exercises. Keri, thank you so much for sharing, like, not just your perspective, but also really practical tips with our listeners. What I would like to ask you to is to wrap up this conversation by revealing a little bit of what you wish this whole wealth and financial system looks like in the future. What is that new wealth in the new earth? How, in an ideal world, what would you like to see for us as a humanity on a global level?
I love that question. Thank you. So for me, ever since I started learning neurolinguistic programming, or NLP, 16 years ago, I think, at that point, I realized the importance of self-responsibility. And it has been my mission ever since then to help people to understand what it is to actually take self-responsibility, meaning in every single aspect of your life, looking at yourself first and being like, how did I create this? Because if you look at it and go, how did I create this? Then you can change it. And when I look at the conditioning that we have on a global level, I know 100% it takes each and every single one of us to look at ourselves, take responsibility for the conditioning, go, this isn't real, right? On a quantum level, the scarcity, the lack, the fear, it's not real. We've been conditioned to believe that. And so on a very big picture, I 100% believe that it is through individuality of all of us taking self-responsibility for our own conditioning, our own thoughts, our own actions, and taking them into this place of infinite abundance, bliss, joy, peace, and love. And the more that we choose that from within and radiate that out, then each one of us, like you and me, Ria, and anyone who's listening to this, gets to then ripple that out to the person that we meet next, that we meet next, that we meet next. And I watched this movie from Stephen Greer called something of the Fifth Dimension, and it's about aliens. God, you'd probably love that movie, about his work. So he's a guy in the CIA. He was in the CIA, and he was doing work with extraterrestrials. And so now he's left the CIA, and he actually takes people on journeys to go and meet extraterrestrial beings, and he calls them in. Have you seen this? Yeah,
I can't remember the title, but yeah, I know which one you're referring to. Yeah.
Element, something of the Fifth Dimension. Just go look up Stephen Greer, Fifth Dimension. Yeah. You can rent it. It's on Amazon Prime, I think, or something. I don't know. You'll just go look it up and watch it. It's amazing. But at the end of the movie, he says, it will take 1% of the world to shift the consciousness of this planet. 1%. And when he broke that 1% down, it was something like 100 million people. And I was like, that's it? Okay, big vision thinker here. I'm like, that's it? 100 million people to shift the entire consciousness of this planet. We can do this. We, you, me, and anyone who is here listening, can do this. Sorry, something just popped up. We can do this, and we can completely shift the consciousness. And what would happen if each and every one of us took self-responsibility and said, I create my own joy. I create my own bliss. I create my own abundance. I create my own love. And we come from these spaces of love, joy, bliss, abundance, peace. And we embody that. From that place, we completely change the world. And when I look at that, I think if we all took responsibility for ourselves, we would not have war, because I wouldn't blame my neighbor. I wouldn't blame the country. I wouldn't care. When we start to look at borderlessness between currencies and DAOs, and how we can literally create a borderless society, world globally, right? Like, I think we don't even need to be fighting over the land anymore. There's infinite for all of us. We don't need to do this. And so my vision for me really is like, how can we create this new earth, this new wealth, this space of infinite bliss, joy, peace, and abundance and love, and be that and emanate that and experience that on this planet, because it is 100% here for us. And when I hear you even talk about like the Arcturians or these, these other extraterrestrial beings, I think in my mind, I'm like, I don't channel them the way that you're talking about. But like, I still have this connection, as we all do. And I still think to myself, they don't do this. They can't be doing this. Of the light space that they are in, they are not fighting the way that we do. They are not in lack. They are not in these places, which means that it is available for every single one of us. And the question becomes like, how do we do that within a human form, right? Because we are still human and we still have human things. But from the highest of our ability, I firmly believe that we can live in this space, and that it takes each single one of us choosing it. And the stuff that will come up is, you'll go into the crypto space. You're going to go try some things out. You're going to go experience new things with, other new earth aspects that you're hearing about on this podcast, and stuff's going to come up, and you're going to hit your resistance. You're going to be like, and you're going to be human again, and you're going to be in your emotions, and you're going to go into dark places again. But the point being that we then come right back. How can we come back to our infinite state of bliss? And if we continue to remember that we do live in a quantum realm where that exists at any given point in time, then we can tap into that in any given point in time, and we can manifest, like you said. I mean, I swear to God, I don't even know where time is going these days. I don't know about you, but I'm like, how the heck is all this happening so fast? Like, wasn't it yesterday? Oh no, that was 3 months ago. Or sometimes I'm like, wasn't that 3 months ago? And that was 3 days ago. right? And I'm like, how did this all just get created in this fast amount of time? And money is flying in faster and easier. And like the more that we release this attachment to any of it, everything gets to be here. And I think the next piece of it ultimately is, and it's funny because this is definitely, I can feel it. Like it's been my journey since writing this book was the only thing stopping any human being from being in this space of the new wealth or the new earth is our own choice to suffer. It is our own addiction to suffering, which is what we've been conditioned to believe is true and real for us. And it feels true and real for us. So, but my mission since then has been like, all right, how do I release all the things that I'm doing that is creating suffering for myself? And if I could leave this, like, I've asked, you're asking for this last piece. If I could leave you with one last thing, it's this, like, look at the places in your life that you are creating suffering because you are the one creating it. If you look at yourself as you are the creator of your own destiny, you are creating the suffering, no matter how much it hurts to fucking look at that, because it will. Right. And then you have the choice though, to say, I choose differently. I choose a different relationship. I choose to show up for myself differently. I choose to be loving myself better, and I don't mean like just because you have to go out and get a massage. I mean like truly loving yourself, and then we start to do these changes in ourselves and we change the world.
Nothing more to add. That was Keri Norley, the Wealth Alchemist. Thank you so much for being our guest and sharing your incredible perspective on the new wealth. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me here. This has been so beautiful, Ria. I love what you guys are doing on this show.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Architects of Destiny podcast. Be sure to subscribe and we will see you on the next episode.